In a world where Sony opts out of the biggest American gaming event of the year, and Brandon challenges the masses on the true game of the year, this is Sick and Wired. Welcome, one and all, back to Sick and Wired, the exclusive Sick Critic podcast. My name is Brandon Pirro. I'm a staff writer for the site, and I'm here with David, our PR extraordinaire.
Hello!
Genius guy. And I'm here with Peter, another staff writer on the team.
Hello, third time's a charm.
And we have a lot to get through today, so we are going to get started. We've got things like some news with Nintendo winning some money from ROM sites, Sony and their E3 plans, Fallout 76, the whole deal there, Pokemon Let's Go, Eevee and Pikachu just released, and of course, we can't forget the Game Award nominations. We'll also be discussing that. But first, as always, we gotta know what we're playing. What are we playing, David?
Dude, I am playing all sorts of stuff. Probably a little more than I should, but whatever. I've actually been playing a lot of Rocket League still, which doesn't surprise anybody. But the first season of their Rocket Pass is coming to a close, I think, on like November 26th. So I've got like 10 days to finish getting like all of the cool looking little, unlockables or whatever for their Rocket Pass. And I have like 8 more left to go. So I've been trying to grind the hell out of the game to get them all. I have been playing Red Dead Redemption 2, which is absolutely incredible. Funny story real quick. So, and this isn't like a spoiler or anything. There's a town that like once you get to it, you're like automatically wanted dead or alive. Or at least I was when I first walked in. They're just like, you're just automatically wanted dead or alive. If you literally step on a twig, we'll shoot you on the spot. And I'm just like, all right, that's cool, whatever. So I like walk into this post office because I was like, oh, well, if I'm wanted dead or alive, maybe like there's like a bond or something. Once I pay it off, I'll be set. Well, I go in there and there's like a dude behind the desk and then there's like a guard, and I didn't realize he was a guard at first, and he just starts like kind of talking like, a bunch of smack and everything to me. So at first I tried to like diffusing the situation. I was like, no, man, like I'm only here just kind of walking through, don't mind me. Well, then he says something else to my guy, and I'm like, all right, like, I'm not going to let you walk away without saying that. So I chose to antagonize him, and so my character goes, oh, must be real hard standing there doing nothing all day. Well, then this guard just comes off and just starts wailing on my dude with fists, and I'm just like, what is going on here? And this guy, this poor owner of this post office is like, take this outside, I don't want this in here. And I just turn around and start pounding the hell out of this dude. Kill him in the post office. the post office owner's like screaming for help. So there's like 15 people outside with guns and everything, and they're shooting inside this post office. I end up taking out the owner of the post office because I'm like, you just ratted me out. After all was said and done, like this all escalated within probably a matter of 5 minutes. It went from peacefulness to half of their population being wiped out due to me. And it was hilarious. I had a blast doing it. And now I'm literally no longer like allowed in that town. Like they've like hired reinforcements. So there's like extra people that are like armored and in there. And I'm just like, oh, I can't ever come back here. Thank God I'm done. And then the Let's Go Pokemon games came out today. So I've been playing the Pikachu version a little bit, not much, but enough to say that I do like it. I love the 3D factor of it and everything, and it looks gorgeous. I don't like how it kind of got dumbed down. Like, it's still a full Pokemon RPG, but the way they do stuff is just a little weird to me, especially being a veteran of myself since the red, blue, and yellow days. And then still a ton of D&D as well. So, yeah. And Warframe. Warframe's been my new kick. So, I've been doing an absolute ton of stuff. So,
That's all cool. So, what about you, Peter?
Well, I've been playing a lot of Spyro Reignited Trilogy since that game is my childhood. And I just beaten Spyro 1, and the remake has been made incredibly well. I'm on to Spyro 2 right now, and the level design, the graphics, and the gameplay are all fantastic. Um, yeah, I'm thoroughly enjoying it so far. I'm really happy what Activision and Toys for Bob had done with it.
Yeah, honestly, I played a little bit of that too. That's actually like really really good.
How about you, Brandon?
I have not gotten around to playing a ton of games this week. It's been a crazy busy week for me, but I've always got paladins at my side, which is always good. But I'm still chipping, just like last week. I'm still chipping away at Red Dead Redemption 2. Um, uh, Although one game I did get that I've been wanting to get for a while, but I've just kind of put it off is I finally got Dragon Age Origins. I
Ooh.
decided to go back and play a game that came out a while ago, but I've always kind of wanted to get into, and so far pretty good. Not super far into it or anything, but other than that, it's the same old stuff for me. Don't quite have the stories that you guys do.
Wow, I have way too much time on my hands.
It's all right, David. That makes you a better PR guy.
Yeah.
Better at talking. Speaking of which, we should get into news.
Yeah. So first piece of news is we've got Nintendo. They get $12 million from two lawsuits on ROM sites. So what do we think there? I know this is kind of a big thing for a lot of gamers in the gaming community in general because it's like ROM sites are a huge way of how we save and remember some classic retro games that we can't really get anywhere anymore. And so now it seems like those are fading away. But why don't you guys? What do you guys have to think about that?
Well, I've actually looked into the story a little bit, and one thing is that the people who are behind this website are basically broke now from this lawsuit
I would
because they
imagine.
weren't really rich. They're like a husband and wife, and they just were just redistributing like older games because they were passionate about Nintendo. And since Nintendo was like really against this kind of thing, as they usually are, they basically bankrupt them and put them in a lot of debt with this lawsuit. So I'm hoping they like pull through, but I don't think this
I
will
don't know.
necessarily deter more. Or
It seems like your basic story of victimless crime. I mean, if you want to get really technical about it, it is a crime, but it's a victim. If it's a victimless one at that, and one that actually I think helps the gaming industry in its pursuit. Because we're starting to get to the point in the gaming industry where it's such a disposable medium that we're already needing to archive things. We're already needing to go back and say, oh man, these are records that, if you will, that no one can find anymore except on these ROM sites, and now we're going to get rid of them because why? Because the companies just don't like the precedent it's setting, I guess. I don't know, but these games for the most part are long gone, and it's hard to see how Nintendo would be making any money from it, any money other than what they just made from the lawsuit.
yeah,
So why is it such a bad thing to have these classic games on these sites?
and they would make so much more money from a virtual console. Like if they just redistributed like all these games, sold them for like $10 a piece, I'm sure they would make millions of dollars from this.
Well, yeah,
Like
it's
even more than that.
and I agree with you on that too because it's like so Nintendo, I'm sure So just for example, since like I was just talking about the Pokemon Let's Go games, those games are literally based around Red, Blue, and Yellow from way back when. So, but it's like, obviously, like, they don't have that same, like, some of the same mechanics as those, but some people like me who played those a long time ago, that is super nostalgic for me. Like, I would love to be able to play Red, Blue, and Yellow on my Switch or whatever, but I can't because they don't offer it. So where would be the only other place that I would get it unless I had a copy of it, and that is getting a ROM of it. And if they're constantly shutting down things so that people can't play these games still, and bringing them, like a resurgence in them, it's like, well, then what are you doing with it? You're going to just prevent people from playing it just because you don't want them to, and because it's an IP? Like, I get the business aspect of it, but you are literally killing fan service. Like, there are a ton of people that I'm sure would pay even more than the $10 or whatever for some of them. Like, if you don't have a 3DS to be able to play some of these older games, that's like your only way of doing it. So I don't know. I mean, for me, I have a Raspberry Pi. I modded it to pretty much be a retro gaming console, and I'm able to play the original Sonic game on there. I would have loved to have been able to play one of the, maybe older Mario games or one of the older Pokemon games or whatever, but it's like you can't find them because Nintendo has literally just put their foot down on every ROM site. They're like, if you have this, you're going to have a lawsuit on your hands. And we already see now that they're winning these lawsuits, and it's only a matter of time before, maybe another one comes up and they get more millions, and it's like, all right. I don't know. I have issues with it. I won't go into a rant, though.
I don't know. I think it gets to a point where it's like, is it copyright infringement? Yes. Is copyright infringement a crime?
Yes.
Yes, it is. But it's only a crime if the company or the original owners make a huge stink about it. Otherwise, the amount of copyright infringement that happens nowadays with mediums like YouTube and, for a short while anyway, things like Vine. And, copyright infringement is rampant. Okay? But it's not until they actually start getting traffic, and then all of a sudden these companies come out, and they are the ones to make a huge stink about it. They are the ones to come out and say something that it really becomes an issue. Until then, it may as well not even be in the law at all.
Yeah.
So this is entirely on the shoulders of Nintendo, and it's really confusing why it's such a huge deal to them. Exactly.
Well, and here's my thing too, okay? So Nintendo makes tons of money. I mean, they are literally rolling in it from the Switch and all of the games that they're putting out, and I mean, they are just doing everything right about it right now. So for you to go after, especially like you were saying, like these are victimless crimes. Like, I understand that it's, copyright infringement, but it's literally just so that other people can play these games, because Nintendo, like, for as much as I love you, you're doing a shitty job of not putting these out for people to continue playing. I mean, that's the whole reason why Xbox went back and said, hey, we're doing backwards compatibility. And even Sony, for a couple of their games were like, hey, here's some old PlayStation 2 games that we're bringing back into the PlayStation 4 console that you can play, and you don't have to stream it like their PlayStation Now service. Why aren't you bringing these games back? Like, this is literally like a money pile that you're just sitting on, and you're not letting anybody else create these games and these ROMs so that other people can enjoy them. You're literally just taking that freedom away and saying, oh, and you're screwed. You're like, you can't play this. And it's like, I don't really think that they need to be socking these people who obviously are not rolling in millions. Like, they're not making any money off of doing this. They're literally just doing it so that other people can enjoy the game. And they're like, oh, well, now we're going to hit you for millions of dollars. And it's like, oh my God, like, I can't afford that, Like, these poor people are going, like you said, bankrupt over just trying to provide something that everybody's been asking Nintendo for. And yeah, so I mean, it just, in this instance, I think it makes Nintendo look bad. Like, again, I understand the business perspective, but I disagree with it entirely.
Yeah, it's unethical, but, like, it is technically legal.
Oh, yeah.
However, there are certain members of the gaming community, outside of companies, of course, that are making money, and one of those people is a hacker who, I can't name him off the top of my head, but basically he calls himself a bug hunter, and he was paid $15,000 in bounty and $5,000 in a bonus from Steam for finding a groundbreaking bug in the system where he was able to generate thousands upon thousands of game codes for countless games on the site, just through some hacking. I don't know the extent to which it was or how simple it was. I'm assuming it wasn't that huge, this did happen in August, but we're hearing about it now, and I personally love to see things, these hacking abilities, if you will, used for something good, and instead, because he could have easily exploited the crap out of this bug, but he doesn't, and I think that is something that we need more of in the gaming industry.
Well, and to be honest with you too, like there are actual like all of any big company actually does this. Like Microsoft does this. I'm sure Apple does this. I'm sure any Google does this. They will actually hire people who are like what they consider or what they're called ethical hackers. Because sometimes the word hacker actually gets kind of a derogatory name. Like if somebody gets called a hacker, they're like automatically like breaking into bank accounts and stealing stuff, and that is literally not what it is. And take it from me, like I am a cybersecurity major in college, so this is like straight up stuff that I study. They actually will hire people to find like vulnerabilities in their software and anything, and pay them large sums of money like this guy received for finding them, so that like, you know, like say if this was for Google and he was like, oh, I found this major vulnerability backdoor thing where, you know, somebody could go in and actually start, you know, inputting viruses through this portal or whatever. And he told Google about it, and Google's like, dude, yeah, thank you for doing that. Like, we wouldn't have seen this otherwise. Here's $50K, you know, for finding this. We're going to get our engineers now to jump in and patch this, you know. So that's like, they actually, there's many companies do this all the time. So like the fact that this guy did this doesn't surprise me, but the fact that it was on Steam and that it was such a groundbreaking bug is actually like pretty solid, like that they did that. And it wouldn't surprise me if they don't have more stuff like this later on.
Yeah. And it encourages the community to like break their system,
Yeah,
which is kind of cool.
like all these guys, like, I mean, how many times have you heard of people, you know, like DDoSing, which for those of you that don't know, that are listeners, DDoS is like distributed denial of service, which means you send so many, you know, requests to a server at the same time. Like, and I'm not talking just like thousands, like it could be 1,000,000 requests all at the same time to a server, and the server doesn't know how to handle all of them. It's literally like if you were standing in a crowd of like 30 people and all 30 people wanted to come up and talk to you at the same time. You get really overwhelmed. You don't know how to handle it. Same thing with a server. Server sits there and goes, I've got 1,000,000 requests coming in. I don't know how to handle this. And the server literally will break. Not like physically, like, but internally, like, you know, software wise, it will break and shut down. And that's when you have, you know, issues like this. But it's like, if you got guys that are able to do that and everything, hire some of these guys to start, you know, doing stuff like that to these servers, or, you know, or doing other things like this with the software. Like, as you can tell, like, this guy, just for finding this bug, which probably took, you know, if this guy's a hacker, he's probably been doing this for a while now. He probably found this in maybe, you know, at the most like a week, you know. And he already made more than what I make in an entire year. So I mean, think about that for a hot minute. So it's like, instead of using like your skills to do stuff that's really, crappy, you could literally be doing it for good and making a killer on it, So kudos for this guy. I hope to see more of it in the future. That's my take on everything.
Yeah,
I agree.
Seeing this story just makes me thankful that it's this guy that found it and not Bill across the street who's looking to make some money off of all of those codes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, because again, like, that guy could have easily turned around and been like, oh, I can generate all of these different codes for all of these games that I want and that are popular and sell them, and instead of him doing that, he's like, no, I should probably tell, Valve, that Steam's got this giant bug and let them fix that so that nobody else finds this and actually, does heinous things with it.
I think it's humorous for me to think about a situation like this and think about how Steam and Valve must have reacted to this. Like, they get together and they're in a board meeting and they're just kind of all sitting there and they're like, all right, how the hell did we miss this? Who was in charge of this? Like, but kudos to him though. But let's keep this train rolling. We've got some new news that actually I just found out about today, coming out of Xbox and Phil Spencer's department. They're saying that their next console that they're working on, this is not next gen, but their next console they're working on is part of the Xbox One family, and it is actually a discless console, which ties in a lot to what we've been talking about before on these podcasts, especially Devin. He had a whole rant about it on one of the podcasts, but this idea of streaming and not owning physical copies of what you have. And I know David has a huge stance. You have a huge stance on you like to physically hold it, and I'm totally with you on that. But at the same time, this just made sense. This made sense for the gaming industry, probably, especially from a business decision. For consumers, it's going to be cheaper than a traditional Xbox One. Any games that you have discs for, you can get this Xbox One, and there's a way that you can go to participating game stores, most likely any GameStop on the face of the planet, and you can turn in your disc and get a code, which in the end promotes it helps game stores because they're in a tough spot right now with trying to sell used games. It gives them more stuff to sell and to use, and I think it's pretty awesome in that respect. It's only going to cost $200 around that area, but what do we think?
I'm going to jump in, so I apologize, Peter, if I'm stealing your spotlight here for a hot minute, but I have, like, the minute I saw this, I was like, great idea. Because I'm all, like, as much as, and I don't necessarily like physical copies, I just like actually owning my games, which, when I started messing around more with NVIDIA's GeForce Now, like, you do own the game, but you're just streaming the graphics to your, like, PC or console or whatever. So, like, if they do something like that, I'm fine. Or that's fine. As far as the discless Xbox, again, great idea. I think that, with everything going digital, that is the way they need to go. As far as it being an Xbox One console in 2019, I personally feel that it's a little late in the console generation to be spending so much time and money on your resources on creating this when we know that they're already working on the next console. It just, I don't know, it makes me cringe a little bit because I'm just like, you already You're already working on the next console. Save that for the next console. Like, don't worry about making another Xbox One. Like, everybody is fine with their OG, released Xbox Ones, and then you have the Xbox One S, and then you got the Xbox One X. Keep them like that. You have another 2 years that people can just enjoy those. Just worry about, talking about the games or whatever that you're going to release. Don't worry about any more consoles. Save all of that for the next generation. I personally think that even from a business perspective, this doesn't make much sense.
I don't know. I think I would tend to disagree, but I'll let Peter weigh in first since he hasn't gotten a chance to.
Yeah, I feel like having a discless Xbox One, you're not really putting that much resources in it because you already know like all the technology is there. You're just taking stuff out, really. And sure, you can like debate like, oh, they have to spend time on design and whatnot, but it really shouldn't take that much time to like design a cheaper alternative to a console that's already been out for years. So
Well, and the thing too is, I'm like, one of the main things that they were talking about was cutting down on production costs. How expensive is it to throw in like a disk drive? Like, I know if you're building a PC, you can get a Blu-ray drive that does, rewritable discs and all this other stuff for pretty cheap. Like, I don't think it would jack up the price of, I don't think it would jack up the price of the console that much to a point where that would be even somewhat of a reasonable option, I guess. I don't know. What are your guys', any other like final thoughts on this?
I think it's great. I think from a business standpoint, the fact that it's cheaper than your typical console, which is gonna be around $300, unless you're the Xbox One X, in which case you cost about $500 for some reason. But I think the big thing here is that it's cheaper. If it costs just as much, then I would say absolutely not. This is a terrible idea, but I think this is a great way actually to kind of ease into the next console generation. This is a great way they're going to release a new console. It's probably going to be pricey, but it's a good way for lower income families to feel comfortable with buying a new system, even as we're going into the new Xbox generation. And also, it keeps the Xbox One relevant despite the new Xbox generation. The new generation of consoles is going to take off no matter what. This keeps the Xbox One relevant for just a little bit longer and more. And I'm no economist, of course, but it doesn't take an Einstein or anything to know that if the price goes down, then the amount of people willing to buy it is always going to go up. So we now have more people willing to buy an Xbox One than before they decided to go this direction. Plain and simple, if they decided to go this direction, or if they didn't, rather, in some alternate universe where they didn't decide to go to this direction, they are, in effect, making less money, I think.
So what should it be named?
It should be named the Xbox disc, not lols.
Xbox
The
D.
Xbox D.
Yes.
The fact that we said that spontaneously made it that much better.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving away from Microsoft, though, we've got plenty to talk about with Sony. They have totally eliminated E3 plans from 2019 altogether. It's not even a thought. They will have no booth, and I don't believe they're going to have a conference either. And this is the first time in 24 years of the conference that they are going that is going to be the case. And between them canceling PSX and now they're not going to be at E3, which E3 is the absolute biggest conference in the gaming industry, especially within the United States. It's you got to wonder what are the reasons behind this. So we want to weigh in on that.
I mean, a common excuse they have is that, like, oh, you already know about all the games we have. And they've been showing the same, most of the games they've revealed are still being shown in, like, this year, and for them to, like, have their sometimes, like, fourth year, like, being shown to audiences worldwide, and, like, with Death Stranding and The Last of Us. It makes you think, like, are they going to just, like, not waste people's time and money for, like, having a conference where people know who, like, know what's going to happen, like, what Sony's going to have. And it also, like, makes me a little excited because, like, the next big, conference should be a lot bigger than, what we've been usually getting because they want their next, big conference to really surprise people, and to have like big announcements that people will talk about like for like hours on end. So they just want to impress fans again, like they did in 2016 and 2015. So
Here's my thought on this. So no Sony at E3. Guess what? That's totally fine with me. For as much of a person as I love E3, and actually it would really suck because if I get a chance to possibly go to this E3 and not have Sony be there, it might actually break my heart a tiny bit. But good for them in realizing that, hey, we don't really have a whole lot else that we want to show off right now. Like, we've already shown off all of our big games. We're not going to talk about our new console that we're building, that everybody knows we are. I mean, we don't really have anything to announce, so why try to force stuff and scramble and gather stuff together just to say that, oh, we're still having a conference? Like, if you don't have anything, like they didn't have anything for this year for PSX, so there's no PSX. You don't have anything for next year for E3. Don't go to E3, like, plain and simple. That to me, it doesn't bother me. The only thing that I will say is that, does this also mean that we will not be hearing any more on, like, Death Stranding for next year? Like, outside of maybe stuff like I'm sure we'll end up hearing something about it at the Game Awards show. Outside of that, I mean, does that mean now that that game isn't going to be released next year?
no, they've actually like said there's gonna be a. Oh, what you're gonna say, Brandon?
Well, I think this is a. I keep going back and forth in my mind with this decision, but I think in the end, this is a good thing, and I think we talked about it when the whole PSX thing was announced, and that just this idea of we don't have anything to share. So why are we going to waste this money? Why are people going to waste their time? Why, it makes too much sense to skip. It makes too much sense to not go. But the big disappointment is, like you guys said, they have a lot of projects up in the air right now where we're looking at it and we're like, we kind of want to hear more about that. But I think this is them just saying, you know what, you're not going to hear something new about that. You're not going to hear something new about that for a while. That tells me stuff like Death Stranding, PlayStation 5 for sure. Last of Us Part 2 most likely. These are all games we can probably expect to see in 2020 at the earliest. I think that's what that's what this is saying big time is because
they haven't necessarily said they're not going to have like they're not they're not going to be completely quiet for 2019, since they've also said like we're gonna like present our things and present our games in like different ways, like other than E3, but like through like online means or whatever. But
I
I do
know,
think
but
we're
I
going to
just
see
feel
like
like for games as big as these are, Death Stranding, I mean, has a lot of hype around it just because we don't know what the hell it is, and uh, so that's got a lot of hype around it. The Last of Us, is considered by a lot of people to be one of the best games ever created. It's like somewhere it's in a lot of top 100 lists for games of all time, and it, now the sequel coming out, and we've seen a lot from it. We've seen some gameplay from it now, and it just seems like, again, there's so much about these games that if they had something for it, they'd be at E3. They would be there, and especially if they had their PlayStation 5, they're not going to skip E3 when they've got these kinds of huge announcements. These are announcements that everybody needs to hear about. They need to reach the widest audience possible because that's going to be the best for business. But
Yeah.
I mean, look
the,
at Red Dead 2, that wasn't at E3, and it still sold incredibly well because people knew what that game was. So I think Sony's banking on their notoriety. Like, okay, here's this big PlayStation game. It's gonna come out like this day online at this time, and they're probably banking on people to like just tune in around that time.
That's true, but the thing with PlayStation is that a lot of these huge titles they're working on are exclusives. When you've got Red Dead Redemption 2, you've got so many different companies working on trying to promote that. You've got Microsoft promoting it. You've got Sony promoting it. You've got not Naughty Dog, Rockstar promoting it. And in the end, we do know that eventually they're going to have Steam promoting it because it's going to be on the PC in 2019 at some point. So there are so many different avenues there. Whereas, who does Sony got for these exclusive titles? They're publishing their exclusive titles. It's not going on any other consoles, so it's just Sony. And so when it's an exclusive like that, if you're gonna do what's best for business, you're gonna want to go on the biggest stage in America and as in the gaming industry, and you're going to tell everybody about, hey, these are the dates, hey, these are all the details you've been waiting for, and that would be the best decision, I would think.
And also confirms that PS5 is coming in 2020, because if it was coming in next year, why would they not have a E3 conference? But anyway,
No, yeah, I'm a firm believer that I personally think a lot of people are excited for 2020. I think that is the perfect time for it. I think that's a perfect time for the PlayStation 5. In fact, there was some hype around PlayStation 5 possibly coming out some, like, I want to say in like 2000, as early as 2016 we were hearing something about it, and I remember thinking to myself, this is a 2020 thing. We're looking at late 2020 at the earliest, probably. And so I think it's perfect timing right around there. Which, like you said, just further shows why, we don't got a new console or anything. I mean, why do we need to be at E3? Anyway, so someone who may be at E3, but definitely um, uh, from a gamer perspective and not a developer perspective, is Cliff Bleszinski. If you guys don't know who that is, he worked on some Gears games, so he's well known there. And then he's probably recently he's best known for his flop with Lawbreakers, which he released, and he has come out in a Twitter conversation and said that he doesn't want to make any more games. He is done making video games, and I really wanted to, and the other two guys, you guys don't know what I'm about to say here because I didn't tell you about it, but I really wanted to go in a different direction here, and make this really about not just not Cliff, but what he was responding to. So on Twitter, this is what he said on Twitter. He said, um, he was being accused of being greedy because he wasn't giving refunds to players who bought Lawbreakers, and so he said, "Hey, I paid my employees their 401ks and their health care even months after the studio folded, so they could care for their families. I didn't take a salary myself for 2 years. I get you're sad, but God, this is kind of this kind of is another reason I am never making another game." But I want to take that and I want to examine what he was responding to. The exact tweet is, "You all won't refund players who stuck with you all and spent the money for you all to keep up the content. Cliff, I looked up to you during the Gears of War days and sad to see you where you are at. Wish you'd come back. Now all that money is wasted." So what do you guys think about that statement? Because I could go on.
So that statement, they only spent like $30 on a game. It's not that big of an investment, so they're not really complaining that much. But there was one former developer that responded to him saying like, I didn't get like months of severance, but it was more like 3 weeks of severance. And then Blazinski said like, oh, but I want to think I'm doing the right thing. And right after that, I just think he's being like a jerk at that point.
Cliff is?
Since, yeah.
Okay. David, what about you? I know you've got a lot of stock in here.
Yeah, I mean, again, I bought Lawbreakers at the deluxe edition, so I still don't think it was a bad investment. I'd have bought it again. But I get what is being said there. I do think that, in my mind, that the one developer who was kind of coming after Cliff saying, "Oh, well, ours was only like, 3 week severance package or whatever, and just kind of like giving him and everything for it." I was kind of like, yeah, and even like, I'm fumbling over my words on this because I have a decent amount that I want to say, but it's like, okay, so Cliff Blazinski, from everything that's being said, and obviously, like, we don't know everything that went into the closing down of Boss Key. So I don't know what their severance packages looked like. I don't know, what all was paid out to the developers after everything crumbled. But from what I've seen on that Twitter message was that Cliff still went out of his way, like, to not take any money for the 2 years. Because, I mean, let's be honest, like, the dude has millions of dollars from his Gears of War days. So I'm sure he's still, even if with him being in retirement, is not hurting by any means. With him not doing that and him trying to, even though it wasn't maybe nearly as much as, some of these people would have liked, like, he still went out of his way to give them something. And to be honest with you too, like, I followed a lot of the guys from Boss Key. They left and then they found jobs like real quickly afterwards. Like, a lot of them went to Epic. A lot of them went off and did other things, like, they're not, it wasn't like they're, and I'm sure there's some that I don't follow and whatever that are still like struggling to find a job or whatever. And I totally feel for you 110%. But it does sound like that Cliff did try to do something for the people that were, working under him to make sure that he's not just like kicking them out the door going, "Oh, hey, sayonara, see you, want to see you." Like, he actually did try to make sure that they had some sort of, Medicare or whatever paid into.
Yeah, he wasn't like Telltale or anything like that, where they just kicked them out of the door in like 30 minutes, but...
Yeah, exactly. And the thing, and that Telltale's a whole, different ball of wax, but I mean, there are very similar things between the two. But yeah, I think that, there's some people that were, it's like he literally, like I said, was trying to do his best, and some other people were just a little butthurt that it wasn't more. And it's kind of like, listen, like, we were already in the hole. This is the most that I can give you, just, I mean, this is kind of like, you kind of have to deal with it. You'll find another job. You guys aren't aren't unskilled or anything, and like I said, most of them did. So
I don't know. I think that personally, I think this story is much bigger on the side of the person that he was replying to than Cliffy B himself, because this idea of wanting a refund is just for me absurd.
oh yeah.
Because I think that's where the big news is here personally. Because developers, they come and go, they drop out. Cliffy B was a great developer, has worked in the industry for many years now. And some guys, they just get burned out on the industry. In this case, he was saying these kinds of expectations from gamers is part of the reason. But this idea of how should we treat video games, because I had my own stock in Telltale when they went under, because I pre-purchased the final season of The Walking Dead, and now it's half finished, and Skybound is working their best to try and get it done. But I mean, at the time, it did go through my head like, so wait, they're not going to finish it. Should I get refunded or something for this game? But
I mean, how would a consumer know any better about the financial situation of the developer? Like, say you bought like a game from Naughty Dog and then they shut down right after. Like, you can't really like predict what will happen.
Right.
To the
And that's
developer.
why I think, and I when I saw this guy's post, I commented on it this same thing. I basically said, I think video games need to be looked at less as a product you buy and more as an investment. You are paying money into a video. You are paying for a video game the same way that you would pay for well, I shouldn't say the same way, but in a similar way that you pay for stocks, where you pay for it. You really don't have a ton of knowledge, especially if you buy it on its release date. You don't have a ton of knowledge of just how good or bad this game is going to be necessarily. And sometimes I think you just have to be able to take that risk, especially with a multiplayer game. That even more so on that, because some video games, because if a company goes under like this, or the video game just isn't that great. I mean, it's just there's just no saving it at all whatsoever, because it's multiplayer, so it relies on servers and stuff like that, and that stuff costs money.
Mm-hmm.
So like the stock market's gonna go up and down, and so will the quality of video games. And I think you've just got to be able to, sometimes you got to be able to say, you know what, $60, $30, whatever you paid for the video game, it's a drop in the bucket. I'm going to spend thousands more on hundreds more games. I just got to swallow that one.
Here's the thing, though, and I think it's, at least in my eyes, is a main difference is, so if you pre-ordered or you spent the money on Lawbreakers, you spent either $30 for the base game or $40 for the deluxe edition. That full game came out. Like, it released. The Walking Dead, if you spent the $60 and you're like, oh, okay, yeah, like, I'm gonna get this full game. No, like, they released them in episodes. It was an episodic series. So when you spent the $60, yeah, you were, at the time, like, guaranteed this full game, but you're getting it episodically. So you're technically not getting the full game right up front. You're getting an episode here, and then maybe a couple weeks later, another episode, and then another episode. Like, you're not getting it all at once, which is one of my main issues with that style of game, and that's a whole different story. But I think that's where, like, there's, like, a main difference is So Telltale went under after what, like the first episode. The first episode actually got released or whatever, and then they fell under, and they were dealing with all this other stuff. Well, at that point, yeah, I feel like you should get at least somewhat of a refund because I did not get a full product. The person that goes and spent the money on the $40 or $30 for Boss Keys Lawbreakers, you were given a full product. Multiplayer only, that's why it wasn't the full $60, but still a full functioning product nonetheless. That I do not think that you deserve to have a refund. I don't care how well the game did or whatever. That game was out for at least a year, had no problems up until the very end. You had a whole year out of it. That's more than $60 worth in my opinion. I actually spent more money on it because I enjoyed the game so much that I was buying the loot crates, So I don't think that the refund in that instance is deserved.
Well, I think we're all in pretty good consensus. There's really no grounds for a refund here. Now, whether or not there are ever any grounds for a refund in a game is debatable. Again, I look at it as more of an investment, so there are very few circumstances that warrant it. But there's some games that gamers are not going to be asking for refunds for, and most of those games are showing up on this year's Game Awards nominations. This is big. This is like Oscars for games.
Yeah, pretty much.
Except less corruption. But
oh shoot.
Let's start banging these out. We've got a lot of to go through now. Just heads up before we get started to everyone listening. We are not going to be going through every single category, simply because there are some spots that are a little bit repetitive, or we just don't know enough about them, or we just don't think it's quite as interesting. And you know what? That's okay, because you guys should be going to thegameawards.com/awards to see all of these. You should definitely be voting if you consider yourself a part of this industry. I think it's a great thing. I would vote on this before I vote on any election in the United States, hands down. This is just so much more interesting to me. So definitely go there, vote, get your favorite game some awards. But let's get started. So first we're going to do the best ongoing game. The nominees are Destiny 2 Forsaken, Fortnite, No Man's Sky, Overwatch, and Rainbow Six Siege. So what do we think there?
Well,
first glance,
Overwatch has been supported a lot by Blizzard. They had like multiple new heroes this year, so the community is definitely very content with how Blizzard has been handling that game.
Overwatch has definitely become a powerhouse, if you will, in the gaming industry.
It's always been a powerhouse.
Yeah, but I think hands down, if we're gonna predict the winner, it's gonna be Fortnite.
Yeah.
Just sheer, because here's the thing: regardless of whether or not it's whether or not you consider it the best, it's got the most fans, so it's gonna get the most votes. This is definitely the winner.
Yeah. I mean, there's other games that I would probably personally like to see, but it's like, yeah, it's a runaway success with Fortnite. They've generated billions of dollars off this game, which is more than some of these other games have ever seen in their entire lifespan. Like Rainbow Six Siege, that game's been out for 3 years. They've never once touched any of the numbers that Fortnite has. Yeah, thank you. I brain fart. I just sat there. I was like, in my head, the little creatures were running around going, what are we talking about? But, yeah, in 3 years, they haven't even come close to the numbers, both, the population, concurrently, or the dollar amounts that Fortnite has been able to pull. It's borderline ridiculous.
My personal vote would go to No Man's Sky. Even though I sold the game a while back, I do respect it a lot for becoming a much better game it is today. Because a lot of people can compare that game to like Minecraft, which is really impressive from what it was at launch, which was so bare bones and boring. But now this time, like, there's so much to do. There's a lot more story, and all of it's completely free. No transactions, no DLC. It's just like you buy the game, you get everything in there, and that's something I do respect a lot. But Fortnite is
I don't know.
definitely gonna win.
I think because it's ongoing game, I feel like there's a lot to be said with the amount of time that it's actually um, been as great as it is, and No Man's Sky was just great this year. Like
Yeah.
you take last year's No Man's Sky and put it into this year, and this is like not even close to a consideration. I think my vote would go for Overwatch. I have never played Overwatch, but I have played Paladins. I know they're very similar in a lot of ways. I've seen a lot of gameplay of Overwatch and analysis of Overwatch. I know it's a phenomenon in terms of going from the all of the stages we've seen it through up to the multiplayer powerhouse it is now, and I think that it has a lot going for it in that sense.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah. But anyway, let's head
Next
over
is
to
direction.
best game direction, which we kind of had a discussion about what this is for those of you listening. You really got to look at a lot of the nitpicky stuff because that's kind of the director's job. The director nitpicks. The teams are kind of left to their own devices. They are experts, and that's why they're working on the game. But the director comes in, he says, we could do it this way to make it better, or we could add this thing into it to make it better. And he's kind of like the first line of quality assurance too, in a way. Like it goes through him, and he says, "Nah," or "Yeah, I like that."
Yeah, it's
So
basically his vision of the game. So
exactly, the director takes the game and he says, "All right, so I get what this game is supposed to be. Here's how I would go about doing that." And then
yeah,
the teams go. But our nominees are A Way Out, Detroit Become Human, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man, and Red Dead Redemption 2. As far as what's gonna win here, I would say it could get close, but it's got to be God of War, right?
yeah.
Am I just
Wait,
crazy for thinking that?
hold on, brain fart again. I'm like functioning very lowly tonight. But
He is at David is at minimum capacity right
I
now.
am literally at no, I'm at like
2% of the brain's
maximum
working.
capacity. I am like, what category was this for again?
Game direction.
Direction. I know, dude. I'm literally like, it's bad.
It's
I don't
okay,
even-
David. You can do it.
If I don't make it through, send help. Yeah.
David, this is the Sick Critic podcast. In case you forgot, we are doing a podcast right now.
Oh, so this isn't Marco's Pizza? Man.
No, close.
Close, okay. But you guys do sell pizza, though, right?
We sell breadsticks.
Yeah,
so-
sure,
Oh.
David.
Your boy's mad hungry, let me tell you. No, so yeah, I think for direction that it definitely should go to God of War. I think there was a lot of detail and everything that went into it that I don't know if maybe a lot of people are aware of.
Yeah, there was a lot of thought and consideration that went into God of War. You can tell it was like a passion project of the director, Corey Barlog.
Well, and I'll tell you what, like, so I've always been a big fan of like Greek mythology, which is why some of you might hate me, and that's okay. You can send your emails to davidfraley@sickcritic.com. I did not really play any of the original God of War games. I played 3 because it was free, and I
Same.
played a decent amount of it, and I was like, okay, like I really like this, and I really like the Greek mythology behind it, but that's, this is about as far as I got. I haven't played any of the other ones. But I love Greek mythology, and I love Norse mythology. And for me, like, this God of War was like, okay, I can jump in and start playing this and not have to really worry too much about previous God of Wars. After beating the game, I went back and like started reading up more on, more Norse mythology to really like get a better understanding for what was going on. And they stayed really true to a lot of like even names of the gods, and just it was kind of staggering that they actually like stayed true to a lot of stuff. And they've even said that like that they use like actual Norse symbols and stuff like for the walls and for the writing and stuff. So like if you actually knew Norse, and God bless you if you do, you could like understand like some of the stuff that they're saying. So it's like stuff like that is where I start to kind of get really impressed by developers. Like even Assassin's Creed Origins did this with theirs, where if you're like walking around and you see like Egyptian hieroglyphics or whatever, like they actually will spell something out if you can read that. Like they actually reach out to scholars and said, hey, we want to make sure that, and I've listened to podcasts of them talking. They literally said, if you can't Google something about ancient Egypt or whatever in a matter of like 10 minutes, like then we might have tweaked a little bit of it, in the storyline or whatever. But if you can find it on Google within a matter of 10 minutes, it's in the game, So I just like how they stayed very true to that culture and everything, which for me stands out. So God of War's got my vote.
Yeah.
Now one thing that's big for me is the camera. The camera, this idea of just one camera through the whole game and no switch at all is so innovative and cool to me. It's such a long game too. I just love that. I love that idea, and that is totally a
And that makes
director thing.
and that makes the cinematography fantastic in the game. It's like it rivals out like some of the biggest movies out there, because like how some scenes are shot, and like you really see the scope and size and weight of like every single shot, and it's really well made. And so yeah, that gets my prediction of winning that category.
And I think it also shows. It's almost like it almost has a sense of pride in it. They know. I almost feel like they know just how good they were with this game, because when you have one camera with no cuts, that means everything you see that's happening in that game, there's no there's no extra rendering happening in the outside of what you see. What you see, everything's being rendered right in front of you. And I think that is super cool. But yeah, definitely a choice by the creative director. But anyway, let's get moving. Now we've got best narrative, a lot of the same stuff that we've already said. Red Dead Redemption 2, Marvel Spider-Man, Life is Strange 2, Episode 1 is in there, God of War, and Detroit Become Human. I'll let you guys weigh in on this one first.
So I'm going to jump in, and I'm going to say, as far as narrative goes, I don't know. I'm going to start rambling again, so, like, cut me off if I go too long. Narrative for me is, as far as, like, actual stories go, like, I love, like, God of War and Spider-Man. Like, these are stuff that I cared about, and I really, like, got engaged in their stories and everything. But to be honest with you, like, I don't think Detroit Becomes Human gets a whole lot of praise for what they did. And I've never beaten the game. I got really, really close, but then just other stuff has come out, and with me trying to stay on top of stuff, I just didn't have time for it. the fact that they managed to keep the story going forward and having multiple different endings and multiple choices, and just like, I mean, literally, like, I think it was when Alana Pierce was still at IGN and they were talking about this game, and she said that she went and talked to the developers, and that she was like, so how many endings do you guys have? And they're like, off the top of our head, we don't really know. They're like, we've got a giant, script that's probably like 1,000 pages long or whatever. Like, I mean, it was just this ridiculous number. And they're like, I'm sure if we kind of walked through it, like, we could give you a number, but, like, we don't really know. Like, for me, I think that, in a way, kind of topples over them all, because the story could go in so many different directions, and it was all on how quickly you reacted and what your choices were, and that for me kind of hits like a little soft spot. I love when games do that. So Detroit's got my vote.
I played yeah.
My vote is totally for Detroit as well. It's they're like you said, all the choices, but also there's just something about and it's not anything that we haven't seen before. There have been a couple movies that have done this same thing, this same sort of idea of like animatronics or robots basically taking over in a lot of ways. But I think this, above all else, this experience was so unique in the way it did it, so fresh to me, especially in the gaming industry, and it was just so well done. I felt like they accounted for everything. It was the writing. I can't even imagine how long it must have taken them, and they paid so much attention to how each animatronic should speak, which goes back to our direction kind of from last time. But a lot of that is also in the script. You've got to know that this type of animatronic would say this type of thing, because that's the way they're programmed. And then now they're breaking free of their programming. Let's tweak what the types of things they say a little bit to show that. And you can, and if you really go in and kind of pick out certain things from the timeline of the game, you can really see it. And it's amazing how great it was, how well they did that. Peter, go ahead.
I'm going to be the odd man out since I didn't play Detroit, but I did play God of War and Spider-Man. And personally, like, God of War has the most emotional and heavy story than Spider-Man, though Spider-Man does have some really good moments too. Spider-Man honestly feels like you're playing a Marvel movie, which is fantastic. And I love Marvel movies, and like having a game replicate that is sort of like a dream come true for me. But God of War sort of takes my vote, since I just had my jaw dropped at so many moments in the game. You could tell like they really like made you feel every single big moment. Like, I think as a linear adventure game, God of War just like sort of runs away with the prize for me.
I could totally get that. Yeah, they did. Again, definitely a great job, especially going back to what we were talking about with the last one, and these details with how great God of War was in terms of writing about the mythology and stuff like that. Right, David?
Yeah, I mean, and I've beaten God of War and I've beaten Spider-Man, and Spider-Man is my, like, I want to jump out and say, like, it is my favorite Marvel superhero. So I was absolutely just enthralled by the storyline for it, and it definitely took, some spins and everything that I wasn't expecting. And then, but yeah, I mean, God of War still was just really, really good, and I don't want to, like, discredit that. Like, just the different plot points that they had, and just the attention to detail overall was just really, really good. I mean, it's gonna start coming down to a point where picking a game of the year is just, it's gonna get really hard, and I'm almost kind of curious to see if that even still sticks around. I mean, I'm sure it will be, just because people like saying, "Oh, this game was nominated for, or this game was Game of the Year." It drives sales for games when you hear that. But I mean, to be honest with you, I think they're all of these games that people have been talking about that have gotten tens, across the board. Like, I think they're all deserving of it, to be totally honest. And maybe that's the balancer Libra in me or whatever, but I mean, that's being honest. Like, I think all of these games were fantastic in their own sense, that it's really kind of hard to, distinguish one being greater from the other when they played so differently and all this other stuff. So, I mean, if I had to pick one, I would probably pick Detroit, just because of that matter. But yeah, I mean, both of them still were fantastic with their just attention to detail, and you can tell that, like, like some of the developers and everything, like when they were talking about these games, like you could really hear the passion behind them. Like, even I was listening to some podcasts where they were talking to Brian, and I'm gonna butcher the hell out of his last name. It's like Anthatar or whatever. And they were talking to him, and he was talking about, like, when Ted Price was kind of, dancing around the idea of doing a Marvel game, and like when he kind of brought it out to, he had like a group of people with him, and he had like a projector, and he shunned Marvel up on the projector, and everybody just jumped up and they were like, Spider-Man! Like, they just, like, that is what they wanted to do. They've been wanting to do a Spider-Man game, and, and them having done Sunset Overdrive was really, like, very similar in sense of some movements and everything, and the speed of the movements, to where, like, these guys were just like, we've already done stuff like this, let's do this, So it's just like, I when you have something like that, it's, you can tell there was just a lot of passion when you played the game.
All right, let's skip ahead to best score / music. We've got Celeste, God of War, Marvel Spider-Man. I'm gonna butcher this name because I've never heard it or seen it before. Nino Kunai 2, Revenant Kingdom. Nino Kuni, is that how it's pronounced?
Yeah.
Yep.
All right. I would like to announce my retirement from journalism.
Pronounce his last name.
Oh my god.
All right, fine.
Who composed it?
I'm sorry.
Nino Kuni 2, Revenant Kingdom. Then we have Octopath Traveler and Red Dead Redemption 2, and already my vote is for Life is Strange 2.
Wait, where is it?
Down. It's not on there, but that is definitely my vote.
Oh, okay.
And I win the Game Awards, right? Is that how? Yeah.
Yeah.
Jeff Keighley should step down now. My vote would go to God of War and Spider-Man are both great in the music department, but my vote would go to God of War because, like, there's some really standout theme songs in there, and just like in E3 2016 when they played the theme song, it just like grabbed your attention with the first like notes of the song. It just really grabbed your attention. It's kind of awesome. And I said that twice.
I am going to agree with that. I think God of War wins that. I am a huge fan, and it's kind of like I'm like a closet epic songs kind of geek, but I love epic songs. Like any scores and everything from like Lord of the Rings, where they get like the French horns and everything, and just like listening to that just demands power, and I just want to go raging on something,
Lord of the Rings, that's got a great score to it.
Yeah, and like when I
And
was listening to God of Wars, like as I was playing it, like I got that sense where it was like dun dun dun. And I was like, ho ho ho, let's do this. I'm
it
ready.
kind of reminds me almost of the classic Skyrim opening, and I love that. I think that's super cool.
Oh yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I started listening to that and I immediately got pumped up. I'm like, all right, let me start tearing down some beasts, man. I got this axe. I'm ready to use it.
For sure. I can't like I said, my vote is definitely Life is Strange too. So I haven't even played most of the games on this list here, but so I'm not gonna weigh in too much on it. I did like Marvel Spider Man. Is it worthy of the award? I would say probably not. I felt like there wasn't enough variety there.
Yeah. Like when
Um,
you're sitting around, it just played your theme song, which is great, but like I needed a little more.
right, yeah, it's great and it should definitely be praised for just that, but it's just it's not quite enough for me. Um, yeah,
Red Dead
that's about
Redemption
all I can
has
add
beautiful
there.
music. I'll say that. I listened to a little bit of Red Dead 2, and it has really lovely music, and yeah, I'd say that's also worthy of the nomination.
I think the problem with Red Dead Redemption 2 is that it's just overshadowed by so much.
Yeah.
There's so much more to that game. You don't even really recognize the music hardly for the most part. I think that's the big problem there. But anyway, let's go head on over to we're gonna do action games, uh, which we're gonna. By the way, we're gonna skip um, best adventure game because it's a lot of the same games that we're just gonna be discussing in uh, game of the year, which is coming up right after this one. But best action game, we've got Call of Duty Black Ops 4, we've got Dead Cells, we've got Destiny 2 Forsaken, Far Cry 5, Mega Man 11.
I'm
Go.
gonna go with Call of Duty, and I mean, okay, so I liked Far Cry 5. Don't get me wrong; it was a fantastic game, and I almost platinumed it, except for some stuff that happened that I wasn't fond of. Like the fact that you can only get these freaking bald eagles during one side mission, and then when you're done with that, they never appear ever again. They're like extinct from the game, and that's the one thing that's preventing me from getting all the freaking animals. So, but it was a fantastic game. But I played Call of Duty, I feel like more. Like there's as far as action goes, there's just more stuff. There's stuff constantly happening. There's not like these, and I'm gonna use the term pause point, because I feel like there's a couple times where you're playing Far Cry where things just kind of calm down and your heart rate kind of drops just enough. And then all of a sudden a bear comes out of nowhere and just mauls you over. And then your heart rate goes right back up again. And I feel like I'm going to have heart palpitations for the rest of my life because of that game. But like Call of Duty, it's just like constant. It's like adrenaline 24/7. Just somebody punch me in the face while I'm playing this to just get me amped up on it. Like that's, I don't know. I think Call of Duty should get it for action.
I would agree. I think this is another category where I have actually the most I've played of any of the games on this list is I played a brief demo of Mega Man 11 at E3 last year, but that's it. So, but I think when it comes to sheer, again, sort of like Fortnite, sheer numbers, and from what I've heard, Black Ops 4 is going to take this no problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so, and I'm gonna let Peter talk as soon as I say this real quick thing.
Real quick, are you sure?
Real quick, I promise. I feel like
I'm
it's almost
hungry.
kind of cliche to say Call of Duty should win because it's Call of Duty, and it's like I feel like every year because of the systems that it should win. But that's just me. Like I don't know. I still think Call of Duty Black Ops 4 was good. Peter, go. I made it real quick.
All right, cool. So I'm not sure who will win, but I would definitely give the nod to from Destiny 2 Forsaken for reviving Destiny 2 because that game launched very mediocre wise, and a lot of fans are content with how are satisfied to how Bungie really revived that game in terms of like map design and like the guns and stuff like that. I think that game alone has like the best gun design in a lot of video games. But I do think Black Ops 4 was going to win it because Call of Duty. That's basically my take on it.
Because Call of Duty.
And that is a valid reason in this day and age in video games.
Yeah, Call of Duty makes a lot of money. I mean, it's really good.
You are not wrong there, my friend.
All right, let's head on over to the big one. I think this could pretty much be considered the action adventure category and game of the year category. But game of the year nominees: Assassin's Creed Odyssey, Celeste, which was kind of out of left field, God of War, Marvel's Spider-Man, Monster Hunter World, and Red Dead Redemption 2.
Why is Monster Hunter World on there?
Yeah, it showed up on there, although
it was good.
It was good, although frankly, I think it's probably on the lower end of the spectrum if we were to rank these.
Yeah,
yes.
So it's Celeste.
Definitely below Spider-Man and AC Odyssey.
Here's what I'm gonna say. So
Uh-oh.
bear with me. I know this could be a really long one. All right, so strap in, boys and girls. Red Dead Redemption. I'm done. Mic drop. Boom. Done.
That's gonna win 100%. I disagree with it.
Not. Wait, what?
I disagree.
Oh,
it
okay.
being the game of the year, but I
show
think
me your
it's
hand,
gonna
sir.
Win. It's gonna win.
Let's. We're gonna have a debate now. Give your game of the year. I'm ready.
The undisputed champion of the year is Marvel Spider-Man. There is no other that did what Marvel Spider-Man did this year.
Get the hell out of here.
That was an amazing game.
I don't disagree with you.
Exclamation point. And I think here's what it comes down to. If you want to argue that Red Dead Redemption 2 is the better game, fine. But the better game of, if we're going to talk 2018, it's Marvel Spider-Man. Because when you're going to talk best game of specifically the year, then you've got to look at things like Red Dead Redemption 2 is a great game, but it's probably a better game than Marvel Spider-Man is. But what did it do this year that we didn't see years ago with the original Red Dead Redemption? That's what I want to know.
So what did it not do?
What did it do that was super different from the original Red Dead Redemption? I felt like it improved on a lot of things, but I felt like there wasn't enough actual new in there for me in terms of gameplay and stuff like that. It just wasn't new enough for me. I felt like I could have a very similar experience replaying Red Dead Redemption.
I would love to see God of War win, since that's definitely in my top 10 list of best games I played ever. So, if that won, I'll be happy clam. But Red Dead Redemption is definitely going to take the award home. Unless, of course, they want to cause a riot.
David, how's your aneurysm going?
It's under maintenance right now. I don't know how I'm going to live throughout the rest of this podcast, so if I just go silent, somebody call 911, because I may not be breathing.
Okay, here's my argument for Spider-Man. Okay, Spider-Man 2 was thought to be a really great game because of its swinging mechanics. But this Marvel Spider-Man this year took that same exact mechanic, literally took a bunch of stuff, like a lot of what made Marvel Spider-Man or Spider-Man 2 fantastic in its swinging mechanics, and it went freaking crazy with it, almost to the point where it's not even close to the same thing, but yet you still know that it's the same thing. But it's so new, so fresh. And there's no other game really that you're going to get the same Spider-Man feel. I mean, what's going to compare to this Marvel Spider-Man we just got? Uncharted 4 because it has a grapple hook. Like you can't name a game. You just can't. It's just so different. The story is a little bit like, okay, it's your superhero stuff, but the way that it does open world is super unique. This idea of there are practically no open worlds where you can just go from one side of the entire map to the exact opposite side of the entire map in a matter of a minute and a half, if that. Probably more like 60 seconds if you're really good with, if you've played it enough and you're really good with that swinging. The photo mode is that we've seen photo modes in games before, and we're seeing them in even more recently, but what photo mode compares to Spider-Man? I mean, this is
That's like the best photo mode ever.
it is amazing what Marvel Spider-Man did this year, and I think
We're
that's my
still
game of
getting
the
a
year.
ton of photos from there. It's just like there's so much you can do in it.
It's ridiculous.
So,
But I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree there. Um,
No, I
but I
definitely
think
respect your opinion on that. Like, Spider-Man is definitely runner-up for me.
I think but I think we can all agree that even if it's not my choice, I think the choice of everyone pretty much this year is going to be Red Dead Redemption 2. That's just going to be the winner.
my thing for Red Dead, and again, I kind of coming more down to a serious note on this. I love Spider-Man. I beat that. I played God of War. I beat that. And I'm playing Red Dead right now, and I'm absolutely loving it. This is where I was talking about like games being very hard to compare when coming up with a Game of the Year nomination or winner or whatever, is because there's just like how, even though Red Dead is good, there's things that Spider-Man just does that you will never see in any sort of Rockstar game. They nailed the web swinging mechanics, and that, like, and I mean, I don't know about you guys, but like, I have a fear of heights. So when I'm standing as Spider-Man and he's, in his little Spidey crouch up on, the antenna of a giant skyscraper, and I go to look down, like, I get butterflies in my stomach. Like, they did that really well, that sense of height, and it was just the arcadey Spider-Man game that I've always wanted. God of War made me feel like a badass just playing that game, like activating all these powers and just slamming dudes and grabbing wolves, the bottom jaws, and just ripping them to shreds. Like, that, you're never going to get that playing a Red Dead game or even a Grand Theft Auto. The thing that Grand Theft Auto and Red Dead, and obviously especially Red Dead, since this is Game of the Year, that does so well is the freedom to do anything. I mean, the fact that I can literally walk into a store, and if I so chose to do, which I do not suggest doing because it could probably ruin parts of the game for you, but you could murder the store owner in cold blood and you will no longer be able to go to that store. That store is off limits. Like, or just the random encounters. Like, I had a guy try to steal my horse. I had a guy that looked like he just ran out of jail, still had manacles around his ankles, and he's like, hey, can you help me get out of these? Like, that for me, there's a certain magic to that. And you will never capture that. And I don't want to say never. I'm going to retract that. I don't think anytime real soon will you see that come out of a God of War game from Santa Monica, or see Insomniac go so open world to where you can do that. It's like Rockstar does some very
It's a
special
revolutionary
things.
game.
Yeah, like they are
It's
very, very revolutionary games. I mean, and then same thing with like CD Projekt Red. Their games, and I'm gonna take The Witcher 3 because The Witcher 3 for me is kind of a way ahead of its time because they did stuff that Rockstar's just now doing, which is like the beard growth, which I thought was kind of cool. But it was like CD Projekt Red already had that done, but both of their games, they just gave you such a freedom to do stuff. And there's like little random encounters where you're helping people, and they seemed like they were actually like in the world for some reason. You know, there was like a little story, you know, behind this character that you don't know about, you know. And I don't know, like I said, there's just a certain magic that I don't think you're going to see anytime soon from any of these other studios. So that for me is why I would give it Game of the Year.
See, everything you just said is why I would give it a better game, say it's a better game than Marvel Spider-Man. But in terms of Game of the Year, that everything you just said is why I'm like, you could have thrust the original Red Dead Redemption into this year, and you could have said all the same things for the most part. You just can't do that with Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's a one of a lifetime.
It is the game of this year. It is this year's game. When I think back to 2018, I'm going to be like, man, that was the Spider-Man year. I better go replay that.
I don't know. Like I said, I like Spider-Man, and I get, you know, why you think that it should be Game of the Year, but I just think that there's, you know, I don't know, there's just, I think that overall, I think the Red Dead 2 just does stuff a little bit better, but again, like you said earlier, agree to disagree.
Yeah. So anyway, that's pretty much it for today's podcast. We went really long with this one, but I think it's well worth it. We had some great discussions there. Love the Game Awards every year. There's so much conversation to be had with my friends, and you guys too.
We're not friends.
No, yeah.
Get me out of here.
But yeah, that was great. You guys want to plug anything? I'm not one for plugging my social media or anything because I just don't use it enough for anything interesting. But what about you guys?
I'm gonna plug the site because I still continually want to drive people to that. Like, and we say this week after week after week. We do have a ton of super duper talented guys on the staff that, you know, whether it's reviews that we're posting or opinion pieces or just whatever, even news, you know, we have some really good stuff that I think is really interesting to read. And if you
it's
like
gonna
this
get more
podcast,
interesting.
yeah, way more interesting than listening to a bunch of nerds talk about games for an hour and a half.
Yeah. Believe it or not, David can also write.
Yeah, it's a rare skill. Yeah. It's a rare muscle that I flex sometimes, but when I do, it's a real jaw dropper, let me tell you. And yeah, like if you like what we've been talking about, you know, with this podcast, you can find us now on iTunes. Just search Sick Critic and you should find us. And we are also on Spotify, which is huge. I was so pumped when we first got there, and I just continually want to keep telling people, like, download the podcast, subscribe, like, put us in your ears. Let me touch your beautiful eardrums. Okay, like,
with his voice,
with my voice, not with, you know, like a wet finger or anything. That's disgusting.
Definitely not my voice.
But yeah, I mean, I think that we put a ton of time into these, and I really like the quality that we're putting out. And I think I'd like to think that we're pretty entertaining to listen to. So if you like to have a little laugh, and you want to be informed while you're laughing, continue listening to our podcast. So that's all I'm going to say. I'm not even going to plug personal stuff this week.
And leave comments. We're always trying to look for ways we can improve it. And when you guys don't talk, it's harder to do that. We just think what we're doing is good.
Yeah,
what we're doing is fine.
If you don't want to listen to my voice anymore, you got to say something, because otherwise I'm just going to keep coming back week after week.
And trust us, he will. We've tried to get him to stop, and it just...
I've been fired 4 times, and I just keep coming back. It's the weirdest thing. You thought I'd be banned from the Discord now, but hey.
Yeah. And if you have any, like, questions, comments, concerns, definitely, like, send us in that email. You can send it to Brandon's email if you want.
Oh yeah, sure. My email. Just plug it. Why don't you? No,
Oh,
it's public information. It's on the site. It's
his
just
personal email.
it's Brandon Puro at sickcritic.com. That's BRANDONPERO at sickcritic.com. Yeah, by all means, we love to hear what you guys have to say about our podcast, about anything we're writing, because we are here because we want to keep you informed, and we want to hear your opinions too. This isn't just for us by any means.
And I already
But
plugged my email too, so if you want to send me an email, you go right ahead. I will chit chat with all y'all.
and he will again. He won't leave.
You can't get rid of me.
Okay, I think I've badgered David enough for today. So that's it for the Sick Critic, Sick and Wired podcast this week. We will see you next week for sure. Have a wonderful, wonderful week coming up. Have a great Thanksgiving. Give thanks.
Are we
I'm
going to
thankful
do a
for all of
Thanksgiving
these
podcast?
games and all these people.
We might not. We will talk about that. If you don't hear us next week, that is wise, because we decided not to do one just to give everybody a break for the holiday. But we will definitely be back the week after that. So
the determining factor is probably going to be the schedule, seeing who's going to be able to do it. Because if we don't have enough people on to do a podcast next week, then that's the real problem, because people are going on vacation, spending time with families, stuff like that. But anyway, keep posted. Again, visit the site. Lots of great entertaining articles on there. We have at least something up pretty much every single day. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Peace out!